day, ladies and gentlemen.
And welcome back to Outside Our Life.
We are your hosts, and today's topic that we're going to discuss is Chapter 5, the prenatal stage of development. I am Jael Fulyoon, student number 25333-722. I was responsible for the following topics: beginning of a new life, chromosomes, genes, and DNA, and congenital disorders.
And I am your second host, Minette Foster, student number 25365798. And I was responsible for the questions about conception, dominance and recessivity, and prenatal environmental influences.
Today's show is all about testing each other's knowledge about an important life to the beginning of a new life.
We will test each other's knowledge about prenatal development of babies. We will take turns asking each other questions about the various topics that fall under prenatal development.
We will ask each other 4 to 5 questions about these various topics.
So, without further ado, Joelle will kick us off with the first topic:
the beginning of a new life. First question, Minette. What is the main event described as the happening in the miniature person during the parental period?
It simply grows bigger and bigger.
Yes. Second question. According to a myth mentioned in the text, how does a human life in the womb?
It begins as a miniature person, complete in every aspect and fully functioning.
Wow. Interesting, eh?
Very.
The text states, it is important for a teacher to have basic knowledge of what type of mechanisms and
the processes of which they play a role in.
Yes. Last question. In historical times, what was the reason that the sexual act was not linked to the birth of a baby?
Relatively long passage of time between the act and the consequence.
So Minette, for a fun fact, in historical times, the sexual act was not linked to the later birth of a baby because of the long time that passed between the act and the birth.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so next we're moving on to conception. Before we start, I just want to say, as we all know, human development can begin in a fraction of a second. Before we get to the quiz on conception, let's start with a fun fact. Human development starts in one of the 2 fallopian tubes of a woman when a sperm and an egg cell unite. So, question 1. How many days before birth does the sperm penetrate the egg cell? And what are the egg cells and sperm cells known as?
280 days before birth, and the sperm cell is gametes.
Wow, you know your knowledge. Question 2. What do you call a fertilized egg cell?
Zygote?
Wow, that's correct. Fun fact. Egg cells are the biggest cells in the human body. They are a quarter of a full stop at the end of a sentence. That's so small and yet so big.
Yeah, yes.
Question 3. When looking at the ovulation of reproductive females, every how many days does this ovulation take place?
28 days.
Yo, the men know everything now. Question 4. How long does it take an egg cell to reach the middle of the tube? And what happens to that egg cell if there was no sperm to fertilize the egg cell?
It takes about 12 hours, and then the cell breaks down into the uterus.
That is correct. And then for the last question about this topic, question 5. For approximately how many hours does an egg remain ready for how many hours does an egg remain ready for fertilization?
Approximately for 24 hours.
Wow, that's correct.
A whole day, eh?
Imagine. For a fact, It is generally acceptable that the fertilization takes place between 12 to 36 hours, usually within 24 hours after the egg cell entered the fallopian tube.
So Manette, for topic 2, chromosomes, genes and DNA questions. Question 1. What is DNA the chemicals basis of?
Uridity.
Second question. What is the life code or the genetic code described as looking like?
It looks like a double spiral or a twisted rope ladder.
Manette, I must say, that twisted rope ladder, that makes me think of a cook sister. The real South Africans, they will know what I'm talking about.
They will.
Third question. How does a new life begin according to the text?
Zygote.
Last question. How many chromosomes are contained in a normal human zygote? The total number.
46 chromosomes. That's 23 pairs. I don't even think I have 23 pairs of shoes in my cupboard.
I must say, even me, eh? Where are chromosomes located within almost every cell in our body?
In the nucleus.
So Manette, for a fun fact about the chromosome packaging. The total length of the DNA molecules found in the 46 chromosomes of a single human cell, if unwound and stretched out, would be about 6 feet long. The chromosome's tightly coiled structure, always this massive amount of genetic material, are fit inside the cell's tiny nucleus.
Wow, that is really interesting. And we will be back after this break.
See you after the break.
At the topic of dominance and recessivity. Question 1. What is the term for two versions of a gene?
It's called the alleles.
Wow, that is actually one from the mother and one from the father, and they're actually evenly responsible. Did
Sure.
you know that?
No, you're learning me something here today.
Question 2. If an individual receives one dominant gene and one recessive gene for a trait, which one of the two genotypes will this individual display?
The dominant trait.
Yes. You see, you know. Question 3. What is the term for a characteristic that is determined by the effect or interaction of many genes?
The polygenic characteristics.
Wow. Now, let's twist it a bit. So now I have a bit of a yes or no questions. So, if an individual's observable trait is determined by a dominant gene, is the corresponding recessive gene still a part of their underlying genetic makeup?
Yes, it remains part of their genotype. Am I right?
That you're correct. You are correct. Good.
So, Manette, third topic is congenital disorders questions. First question. What is the main topic being discussed in this topic?
Congenital disorders. You know, repeating yourself.
Sorry, man. Concerning genetic factors, what is it important to distinguish between two different types of disorders?
Heritage disorders and conception genetic disorders.
Nice one. Third question. Inherited disorders like major depression are believed to have a strong inherited basis. True or false, Manette?
That's true.
Question 4. Down syndrome is characteristics by physical features and usually what type of ability?
Physical features and usually a low intellectual ability.
Question 5. If a disorder is inherited from one or both of the parents, what is it called?
Inherited disorders. Okay, final topic from 6. That was a lot.
Yeah, yo.
We're testing the knowledge today. Okay, last topic, prenatal environmental influences. Question 1. Give me the answer of what the term is for any external factor or process that negatively affects the normal development of an unborn child.
The teratogen.
Wow, that's correct. Question 2, true or false? A teratogen must be a chemical substance to cause harm to a fetus.
It is false. The factor or a process like radiation or certain infections.
You know. I'm sure you studied this.
No, man. All about the knowledge, you know.
Question 3. What specific period of prenatal development is generally considered the most vulnerable to teratogens?
The embryonic phase or the period.
That is correct. Question 4. True or false? The impact of teratogen is the same as all fetuses regardless of the mother's or the child's genetic makeup.
That is false. Genetic vulnerability plays a big role.
And then for our last question of the day, question 5 is true or false? Physical deformities caused by teratogen are always immediately noticeable at birth.
True.
That is correct. Deformities are usually visible at birth. And that concludes today's knowledge challenge.
Until next time.